In the autumn of 2022, Italy witnessed a political transformation that captured the attention of Europe and the wider world. Giorgia Meloni, leader of the Brothers of Italy party, rose from relative obscurity to become Italy's first female prime minister, steering a government rooted in nationalist and conservative ideals. Her victory was not simply another change in leadership within the endlessly shifting tides of Italian politics. It marked a turning point in Europe's ideological landscape. For her supporters, she represented a reassertion of sovereignty, tradition, and national pride. For her critics, she symbolized a worrying resurgence of hard-right populism that risked deepening divisions within the European Union. To understand the significance of Meloni's leadership, one must begin with the political environment that propelled her into power. Italy has endured decades of political instability, marked by fragile coalitions, repeated elections, and an inability to address chronic problems such as slow economic growth, high unemployment, and a national debt that exceeds 140% of GDP. For many Italians, faith in mainstream parties had eroded. Meloni's rhetoric, which promised decisive leadership, the defense of Italian culture, and an uncompromising stance on immigration, resonated strongly with those who felt left behind by globalization and disconnected from the European project. One of the most contentious aspects of Meloni's political platform is her approach to the European Union. While she has stopped short of advocating for Italy to leave the euro or the EU itself, she has consistently criticized what she views as overreach from Brussels. Her government has clashed with EU institutions on budgetary rules, particularly the fiscal constraints embedded within the Stability and Growth Pact. These rules, designed to maintain financial discipline across member states, often collide with Italy's domestic priorities of welfare spending, economic stimulus, and public investment. Supporters argue that Italy, as one of the Eurozone's largest economies, should have greater flexibility to address its own challenges. Critics counter that such deviations could undermine financial stability in the entire Eurozone. Migration policy represents another key battleground. As a frontline Mediterranean nation, Italy receives tens of thousands of migrants and asylum seekers each year, many arriving by dangerous sea crossings from North Africa. Meloni has pledged to clamp down on irregular migration, increasing border controls, and pressing for EU-wide burden-sharing mechanisms. To her base, this reflects a pragmatic response to an unsustainable situation. To opponents, it signals a retreat into exclusionary politics that risks eroding humanitarian obligations and Italy's international reputation. Economically, Italy remains in a precarious position. Decades of sluggish productivity, coupled with the lingering effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and the energy shocks from the war in Ukraine, have left the economy fragile. Meloni's critics argue that her nationalist economic policies risk alienating foreign investors and undermining confidence in Italy's stability. Her allies, however, believe that a renewed focus on domestic industry, energy independence, and reducing dependency on external powers will strengthen Italy's long-term resilience. Foreign policy under Meloni reflects a delicate balancing act. She has reaffirmed Italy's commitment to NATO and continued support for Ukraine, aligning with Western allies in the face of Russian aggression. Yet, she has also signaled a willingness to engage with non-Western partners, including potential closer economic ties with countries such as India and Gulf states. This multipolar approach is seen by some as a strategic recalibration for a new geopolitical era, while others worry it could blur Italy's alignment in a time of heightened global tensions. From a broader European perspective, Meloni's Italy occupies a complicated role. On the one hand, she represents the latest in a wave of nationalist, conservative, and sovereigntist leaders across the continent, from Hungary's Viktor Orbán to Poland's Law and Justice Party. This loose alliance challenges the centralizing tendencies of Brussels, advocating for a Europe of nations rather than an ever deeper union. On the other hand, Italy's size and economic weight mean that any instability or policy missteps in Rome could reverberate through the entire EU. Supporters of Meloni's approach argue that she is injecting necessary realism into European politics, resisting bureaucratic overreach and placing national interests back at the heart of policymaking. Detractors contend that her style of politics risks fragmenting the unity of the European Union at a time when it faces existential challenges, from the war in Ukraine to the global energy transition and the rise of China. Bonus section: Deeper strategic implications. Beyond the immediate headlines, Meloni's premiership may represent a broader shift in the balance of political forces in Europe. If her government successfully manages Italy's economic pressures while maintaining a hard line on migration and national sovereignty, she could inspire similar movements in other member states, accelerating a trend towards a looser, more intergovernmental EU. This would fundamentally alter the European integration project, shifting it away from a supranational vision towards one defined by ad hoc cooperation among sovereign states. Conversely, failure to deliver tangible improvements could discredit nationalist politics in Italy and strengthen the case for deeper European integration. Economic instability, political infighting, or a migration crisis mishandled could see support for Meloni's government collapse, returning Italy to the cycle of short-lived coalitions and weak governance. Strategically, Italy under Meloni also poses questions for transatlantic relations. Her balancing between NATO commitments and outreach to alternative partners mirrors a broader European debate about strategic autonomy. The idea that Europe should rely less on the United States for security and pursue a more independent foreign policy. If Italy leans further into this approach, it could alter the internal dynamics of NATO and reshape the EU's collective stance towards both Washington and Beijing. Furthermore, the rise of leaders like Meloni raises deeper philosophical questions about the future of democracy in Europe. Does the growing popularity of nationalist politics reflect a healthy re-engagement with democratic sovereignty? Or is it a symptom of disillusionment and the erosion of liberal democratic norms? How Europe answers these questions will not only determine the fate of Meloni's Italy, but could influence the continent's political trajectory for decades to come. In closing, Italy's current political moment is not merely about one leader or one party. It is a test of how a major European nation navigates the pressures of globalization, economic fragility, and political polarization in a rapidly changing world. Whether Italy emerges stronger and more confident, or more divided and isolated, will depend not only on Giorgia Meloni's decisions, but on the response of her opponents, her allies, and the European institutions she both challenges and depends upon. For those who have followed my past content on European politics, from France's pension protests to Germany's energy crisis, and for those awaiting my future deep dive into the shifting balance of power in Central and Eastern Europe, Italy's story provides the perfect bridge, a live case study in the battle over Europe's soul.